Stephen Presbury, who happens to be my other half. And he's going to be teaching about new construction buyer's agent. I just want to run through with you a couple of rules set by the division. You must have your camera on if you want credit. If you don't want credit, the CE hours, then you don't need to worry. But if you want the hours credited to you, you must have your camera on. And you also cannot be absent from the camera for more than 10 minutes. They base it on 5 minutes per hour. And as this is a 2-hour class, technically you could be absent for 10 minutes, whether that's arriving late, leaving early, or going for a short break. Steve also during his presentation will give you some keywords, and you need to know those keywords in order to get credit. Anyway, I'll pass the time over to Steve, our instructor. Feel free to use the chat if you have any questions, and enjoy the class.
Thank you, Leslie Ann. Welcome to everybody. I'm not sure if I can see everybody on this feed, but if you can put your full name on there, also if you want credits as well. Apparently that's another one of the rules we're supposed to comply with. You can call me Steve. Leslie Ann's just gone through some of these qualifications, which I'll just put on the screen for you in case you quite get it. Full name on the screen, video on, and then I will give you 3 key words sometime during this presentation, which you'll have to make a note of. And at the end, you'll submit those. I have a little chicken here. That's to remind me to give you a keyword. If that comes up on the screen and I forget to give you the keyword, just unmute and say, let's have the keyword, Steve. Anyway, you can probably figure out that I've got an accent. Hope you can understand me. I'm from over the pond there, from the English department. Moved over here about 11 years ago, and we have got 3 children, Leslie Ann and I. Our 2 eldest settled over in America and married Americans. So after a few years, Leslie Ann said, we've got to get over there, see those grandkids. So that's how we came over to America. We got our citizenship a couple of years ago. We've been realtors. We're in our 10th year as real estate agents, and enjoy the opportunity to help people find and sell homes. We've been in Presidio from the middle of last year, and I can say to you that Jennifer Yo is a superb principal broker. We surely appreciate her, and those who work with her. I'm sure those of you who met her or Steve Perry will know the quality of this company. Do we have any new agents on board, or are we all relatively in the game? Okay, we'll have any new agents? No?
I'm new-ish. I mean, I still feel new. I've had my license for 1.5 years, but I still feel really new. I've just barely got with Presidio.
Perfect.
Thanks to Leslie. Yay. I love it here.
Indeed, I'm very new as well.
Good. We like new people because we tend to learn more from them. Because as we're a little bit older in the game, we forget what we should know. So you guys are early on the board will be able to help us tidy up some of our information. I don't know everything, and I'm going to try and stick to the subject on this course, which is going to be new construction. But do butt in any time if you need to ask any question, because we're all here to learn from each other. And whether we've been in the business 20 years or 2 years or 2 months, we can all learn from each other. We're all here to help each other. First of all, let me just talk to you about raising the bar. We have got a little bit of a new logo there we're working with. As you can see, Presidio needs to always be raising the bar. All of the agents that come on board, we're trying to help you and ourselves look at wherever we are in our business and try and raise our bar. So that little logo is you got the arrow pushing us up, pushing Presidio up, try and make ourselves a little bit better in this industry. You know, there's good and bad in every industry. whether it's the doctors or the dentists or the opticians or any type of business, but we need to be the very best we possibly can in this industry with this company. And I put a little slogan down there, just always strive to raise your bar wherever you are in this business, and whatever information you learn or get from study or from other people, just try and raise your bar a little bit higher than wherever it is. And then we'll obviously all hopefully get to where we need to. So this is our topic today, new construction. Has anybody here done new construction? Had an agent where they've been able to help with new construction? Good, okay. Okay, so we'll hopefully have you contribute as much as you can with your experience. What we're going to try and do is overview these topics. I'll just run these out. We're going to talk about finding the right builder. We'll look at a contract or an agreement with the builder. We'll look at the house plans, the design, which are very, very important. Our communication, the building process, inspections, usually city inspections, overcoming challenges, the final walkthrough, and the settlement and after sales support. So they're the main areas we're going to try and cover in this next couple of hours. We'll take as much time as we need to plow through those items. Let's first of all look at the finding the right builder. I'll put a little note up there. Sometimes finding the right builder can sometimes feel like walking through a maze. When we first joined the business, Leslie Ann and I, we did have some new builds in our first year, but we moved from England, so we didn't know anybody, and we were not in real estate in England. We decided when we got over here, we'd look at real estate and see if it would be a good fit for us. So we not only didn't know people, we didn't know the industry, and we didn't know people in the industry. So we didn't know any builders. And to find the right builder for our clients was a challenge because we didn't really have any experience. And with one of our early customers, you know, we found this builder who got a piece of land. They liked the land. And we thought, okay, well, let's work with this builder. But we didn't know this builder. And unfortunately, it was a bad choice. This builder wasn't the best on the market. In fact, it was a little bit of a crock, unfortunately. And it caused us some serious challenges with our client and with the transaction. Whereas if we'd had a bit more information, a little bit more help in the early days, we could have been a little smarter from the get-go. So finding the right builder is important. It's very important that we figure out who we should advise our clients to work with. The first thing I would suggest is we talk to other realtors. Has anybody here had an experience they'd like to share where they've maybe looking at a builder, they talk to another realtor and they think, you know, maybe we should do a little bit more due diligence on this builder before we go ahead and encourage our clients to work with him or her?
Stephen.
Yes.
It's Kayla Watkins.
Hi, Kayla.
Very favorite. So I just want to say, you know, what you said about talking to other realtors are your friend in every aspect. Those are the people who know that are the things that are not on the market. And so if you're looking for a builder, they're also looking for land. And if you have other people and that kind of stuff, use our agents and our friends in the business to get that information, because a lot of times I will find one of my friends have talked to a company that is well known that has properties that are available in Lehigh, but they won't put them on the MLS. And so by her telling me, hey, you know, in the next, you know, day, there are 4 properties going on the MLS, but they're not going to list them, I was able to tell somebody else. But our friends are our best asset in real estate. So Stephen, back to you.
Perfect, Kayla. Thanks for sharing that. And that not only our realtors, but when we move into a real estate company, our broker generally has been in the business for many years and will also be able to advise us. Now, in saying that, even though someone may not have a bad experience with the builder, it may not necessarily be that the builder was a bad builder or a builder that had challenges. It may have been the client that wasn't orchestrated correctly with that builder. So we have to sort of talk and talk to different people, referral from family, friends. We have to talk to lots of people to figure out who the right fit for us is. We recently had we've actually got a client at the moment that we sold their house. Leslie Ann, when did we sell their house? Was it the Harrises? We sold them, middle of the year? Oh, you need to unmute Leslie Ann. Oh, she's still muted. Now she disappeared. Okay, I'll tell you the story. I think it was about middle of the year. We sold their house. They wanted to build. They found a beautiful piece of land they wanted with a builder. We'd not had any experience with this builder. So we did our due diligence. We asked questions. We asked them to ask their family and friends who may have used this builder. And this particular, they found with this particular builder, they had people that loved him and people that did not have a good experience. They decided to use the builder. And I said to them, I can't find anything, because I'd done my homework, because I spoke to other realtors and brokers, and I couldn't see any reason why we wouldn't use this builder. So we went under contract, and after a few weeks, when we saw the hole wasn't being dug, and they were passing their schedule for digging the hole, we started to get a little bit worried. Now, as it so happened, this particular builder, they were ready to dig, but they couldn't get the permits to start the work. And our clients were running out of time because in their rented accommodation, they'd only got so many months before they needed to move into this build, which, was lined up to be ready for March, April time. And to cut a long story short, we eventually moved builders. And it wasn't because the builder was a bad builder, it was just because he couldn't supply to the schedule because the city wouldn't approve the permits. And so he graciously let us move out of the contract. They didn't lose their deposit money, and we were able to satisfy their need with another builder that had a property already on the move. I can tell you another story. It was a few years ago. We had a client who we knew was working with a builder. They decided to work with the builder without an agent. And we had now been in the business for several years, and we knew several people that had used this builder and had a very poor experience. So we shared that with our client. We were not representing them in the build. We just knew them as friends, and we said, hey, you need to do your due diligence for this particular builder, because we know several people who have had a bad experience. Anyway, we had them even talk to our family and friends who had had a bad experience, but they still decided to use this builder. And unfortunately, halfway through the build process, they had to pull out, and they lost, over $100,000 working with the wrong builder. So I can't encourage you enough to try and make sure you do your due diligence before you start the build, otherwise your clients can lose a lot of income or a lot of funds. Anybody else have any stories or thoughts or comments that they can share on good or bad builders?
This is Tyler. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions, actually. I got lucky and I've done 3 new builds now, and each one of them has been a nice match between the client and the builder. But honestly, I don't know how I would naturally vet a builder other than, just kind of getting to know the builder and see if they would be a personality match with my clients. Do any of you guys have a good, I don't know, like an interview list or like the way that you guys vet the builder? How do you guys do that?
That's a great question. You have been lucky there. And I will say that most builders are good. I think in every industry, most people are good. You always just get a few that are still on the learning curve. But I think those top 3 items on the screen there are probably your best pointers. Talk to other realtors, talk to your broker, and then encourage your client, if they have family and friends that may have used that builder, to talk to them. That's probably the best first platform we can work with. Kayla, do you have a comment?
I do. I would go to current communities and ask the neighbors what they think of the builder, people who've been there for more than a year, to see what would happen and what has happened if they've had any sort of problems, how were they to fix it, and those kinds of things. That would be the one other thing I would add to that.
That's good. And you do find often that some of the frustration can actually happen after the home has been built. Sometimes the builders are good at building the homes because that's where their energy is, but the after sales may not be as strong as, building the property. And then when people have got things they need fixing, sometimes the after sale can be a little bit weak. And that's where some of the frustration can happen with clients. And we'll cover that a little bit later on.
Can I just say, one of the best places is on the Presidio Facebook page. That's a great place to ask questions. I am working with a client. They're thinking of using this builder. Do any of you have experiences? Have any of you used any of their agents? And that's a good starting point. And I think it's good just to confirm that the 2 incidences Steve and I had were with a one-off builder, and they were small companies. They were not companies that most of you would know. And the one where our friends who lost 100,000, she actually called me very upset and said, I should have listened to you. I should have done more research, because they found out there were several lawsuits against this company. Thankfully, that's not very common. But yes, just do your research. And I think a great starting point is Presidio agents.
Yeah, good advice, Leslie. And also, I would suggest you always look at multiple referrals. Don't just take one negative comment and base, your opinion on that. You need to get it from several areas. And I will say, with that particular client that called up and said, you're right on that one, and it cost us, they obviously recognized that we were looking out for them, even though we were not under contract to be representing them. It so happened that the husband was in business to buy rented accommodations, and he used us for 12 or 15 purchases of rental buildings after that experience. So even though we didn't earn any money on that build, we did get a very good return from being honest with that couple. So I think what goes around comes around. So here's another question we need to know right from the outset. Sometimes your client can see a piece of land which they love, and we have to decide whether or not the builder is going to be selling that land to them and they want to use a different builder to build on it, or the builder has the land and they only can use that builder. But we do need to decide whether or not they're buying the land or the land is being rolled into the property price. Any thoughts on land? Buying land first and then building, or buying land with a builder? Anybody have any?
I have something. This is Carrie Morrow.
Okay.
Hi. I had some clients that were surprised one time. They had some land already that they wanted to build on, and building is going crazy, and they talked to the builder, and the builder had their own community, but they were also willing to build on private land. But they gave them absolutely no credit for the land. So if in their community it was a $600,000 house, then it costs them $600,000 even on their own property. So if your clients are looking for property to do a new build, make sure that they talk to their builder first to see if they're going to get credit, because my clients would have done way better to just build in the community than to buy property separate. So that was something I didn't know before.
Yeah, that's a good highlight. Yeah, definitely be careful on that one. Any other comments on build or well, land, buying land? Obviously, for most people, it's better if the builder gets his own construction loan for the land and ties it in with the build, because then they haven't got to come up with the money up front. Because often money for land is hard money or cash. Okay, let's move on. Different builders have different specialities or different things that they're good at. Anybody know what some of those things may be? Any thoughts? So a builder their speciality may be, hey, we are the lowest price. You know, you're going to get more house for less money with us than any other builder. Now, obviously, if the builder is in that neck of the woods, you're going to get a plain house. It's probably going to be a box. It's probably just going to have the basic things there. Sometimes they don't even have a microwave in there. You know, just have the very basic things in there. But your client can get into a house at the lowest price. On the other extreme, it may be a builder that's at the top end, the very high end, and they'll actually do anything you want, of course, and it will be whatever the price is. Then you may have a builder that specializes in flexibility, or a builder that, you know, we always do the landscaping, or a builder that says we always put a fence in, or we may also allow you to have lots of options on your interior colors, or you know, your cabinets, your carpets, or blinds, or whatever it may be. So it is a good thing when you're looking at builders to see what your client wants and see how they are, or whatever they're expecting out of the build, and that can help you find the right builder for them. So be aware of what the builder's speciality is, because that will enable you to know whether or not it's a good fit with your client. Any other comments on that? Okay, this is a big one. We've got to decide if it's a custom-made home or a track home or a spec home. What's the difference between these three types of properties? Who could share? Who's done some builds on all three of those? Kayla?
Yes, so custom made is like those ones that you see in the parade of homes that have the extra hidden pantries and those types of things. A track home is going to be basically, these are the things that we're putting together, and a lot of times you can have some different models, but you don't have a lot of open availability for doing anything. And then a spec home, I think they just put the community all together and they build it, and they just put people in there as they come. Is that about right?
That's definitely right. Spec homes are good if you've got someone who needs to move in now, but they do want a new house. And then they can sort of, okay, yeah, that house fits. It might not be exactly what I want, but, you know, this is a good deal. And I can move in, like, you know, this month. Whereas the custom made, most likely is probably going to take the longest, because everything's got to be made for it. The track home, they're making multiple homes of the same type. Very good. Another question we need to ask ourselves is with or without a basement. And sometimes we can ask the builder, if he builds homes usually without a basement, we can say, what would it cost for the basement we put in? And he'll have some sort of price per foot that he can. Yes.
Or you would have to find out if the water table allows it. A lot of times the water table doesn't allow a basement, so that's why there's no basements. Like the Lehigh, there's a number of places out there that the water table was too high, so there's no basement.
Yeah, and those they'll have like a crawl space. I know my son lives in Lehigh, and he has got a basement. It's not a full basement, but they have converted it to a living basement. But when they sell their house, they couldn't sell it with a basement. They couldn't actually have that as part of the spec. It's a feature. Warranty is important. Find out what the home warranty is and look at that. The builders have usually lots of options on those. Find out whether or not you can make alterations to the home, and if you can, what sort of prices they could be. Another important question is who will oversee the construction of the build? That's quite important. Is your builder himself looking after you, or has he got a builder's manager, or is it kind of hit and miss? Usually with the track homes, they have like a manager that will look after you. Usually on a custom made home, it may even be the builder himself, the owner, that will oversee this construction and look after you. But it is important to know who you're dealing with on that. Find out what and when the inspections are. These are city inspections, so that you can attend those if you desire to. And also, of course, how long it will take to build. And you can never say that it's set in stone, because the builders have outside parameters that are out of their control that they are having to comply with. You know, they've got framers, they've got those who are doing the cement, they've got cabinets they've got to order, they've got the permits they've got to get, and sometimes, you know, in busy periods, they just cannot get the labor to make it on time. You usually find builders that are running track homes are probably closer to their schedule than those that are on a custom-made platform. Any thoughts on that from anybody, or any experiences to share? Okay. Another question is, what are the costs up front and during the build? Particularly if you're a custom-made builder, he'll probably want some down payment up front, and then he'll want maybe a big down payment when he gets to a stage where the house is just going to be built for you, because it might be more difficult for him to sell it for someone else. So once he's got all your custom stuff ordered, you know, he may want like an extra down payment of, you know, $50,000 or something. It's important your clients know that. So find out what those prices are. And then, of course, landscape blinds and fences are usually not included in track home builds, but can be included in custom made. And you do have some builders who are in the track or spec home that will have properties that do have this, particularly if it's been a show home that they want to now sell. Of course, it will be landscaped. It'll have the blinds and the fences and everything in play. Anybody got any questions or any comments or anything they'd like to add to finding the right builder?
I do have a question.
Thank you.
It's not really about finding your right builder, but you were talking about scheduling or getting the dates for inspections to make sure you're there. And in an existing home, normally the inspector goes out without anyone, like they're by themselves, and then you can meet with your client later and they can go over the inspection. Do you do that on new construction at the different points of inspection, or how does that kind of work?
Okay, I've got a slide further on the inspections. Let's cover that when we get to it, and remind me to answer the question for you. But thanks for bringing that up, Julie. Yes, we'll cover that in a bit more detail.
Thank you.
Good.
Hey, Steve.
Yes.
I have one more thing. I hate to interrupt one more thing, but so as a transaction coordinator, we're seeing this at the beginning of the contract. A lot of times we're not realizing that the construction deposit is different than the earnest money. And so when you have your clients take their money to the builder, make sure that it's very specific if it's earnest money or construction deposit, and that way we can get the records the right way. We have a difficult time with certain builders because they say it's a construction deposit, and then we can't get that on the back end to get approved without a couple of extra helps. So just beware of that. And I just wanted to say thank you for letting me interrupt you again.
Yeah, that was a good highlight. Thanks for sharing that, Kayla. Usually the construction deposit is also not refundable. So just bear that in mind as well. Whereas the escrow goes as part of the build that could be refundable. All right, so let's go on to the agreement. So we need to understand that most contracts that are written by the builder, he will supply the contract usually, are obviously going to be in favor of the builder. So we just need to be aware of that. Make sure your client fully understands the contract before signing. Sometimes the builder can be enthusiastic. Oh, what's gone wrong there? I've just lost connection. Let's see what's happened here. Where did that go? Can you still hear me? I don't know what happened there. Can everybody still hear me? Okay.
I can hear you.
Not sure what's going on. Here we are. Oh, it's back again. That was interesting. Okay. So particularly if it's a salesperson, sometimes they can be more enthusiastic than your client needs to receive. So it's okay to say, let me think about it. Don't be pressurized, and make sure you go through the contract with your client before they are in any way pressurized to sign. That's really important. And just on that, the builder should go through every step of that contract before they ask the buyer to sign. They should give the buyer every opportunity to ask a question on every paragraph in that contract. And it's ideal that you are there, because often the buyer may not understand the jargon, you know, the contract build jargon. So you'll be there to help them understand it. Let's see where we are. Okay. You need to find out from the builder whether you're going to get paid on the full price or the base price. Anybody run into that before?
Oh yeah, I ran into
It's a
that.
bit of a shock, isn't it, Tyler? It's a bit of a shock if there's a big extension on the base price, isn't it?
Yes, and I'll just put this out there. Make sure before you enter into conversation, if you got this off the MLS, make sure you print off the MLS listing. My particular incident occurred on an $850,000 home. Base price versus finish price, that was about a $20,000 difference in commission, and well, about a $12,000 difference in commission. And I happily had printed out the MLS entry, and it said on the MLS, hey, you know, we're paying on full price, and they changed it later, which is not allowed actually. And we actually, this didn't quite end up in front of the board, but we almost ended up in front of the board, and the builder finally turned around and said, no, we listed this improperly. We will give you your commission, but we've adjusted it so that won't happen again.
Yep, I've heard of those stories before. Thanks for sharing that one, Tyler. But it is something you need to find out from the outset. And yes, if you do print it off the MLS, bearing in mind, not all bills are on the MLS. Sometimes they're not on there. So, but you do need to do your homework and make sure you know what you're getting paid, and make sure you agree that with the builder before you go into contract. Any other thoughts on that, or any comments or experiences you'd like to share?
If it's not on the MLS, make sure you get that agreement with them in writing, because they may often tell you something, but you need escrow instructions or a builder's agent commission sheet or something like that. But make sure you get it in writing, signed by everyone.
Very good. If it's not in writing, it's probably not going to happen. So make sure it is in writing and it's signed up. Because remember, your contract, even if it's with the builder, it's with a company. And that's why it needs to be signed. You know, if that builder, I don't know, has a change of personnel or leaves the company, or, you know, passes, you've got to have something in writing with that company that protects you and your client right along the process. Very good. Thanks for sharing that. Any other thoughts on that, that little comment there? Commission? as real estate agents, we need to make sure we're getting paid, know what we're getting paid. Another one is the escrow money. Where's it going to be held? Usually the builder's title company will hold it, but find out what conditions that it's protected under, and also find out how much due diligence time you have before the deposit money goes hard. With a lot of the track home builders, where they're producing, you know, many builders like Edge Homes, for instance, they may just take a very small deposit, like $500, and they'll give that back to you, usually if you pull out within, you know, a month or so, because they know they can sell their houses. But if you're dealing with a, you know, a custom builder, you'll probably find that more difficult to get back if you pass a date. Any experience on escrow money and deposits or thoughts from anybody? Good or bad experience? Okay, just make sure you cover that. Another important item with your agreement with the builder is stage payments, particularly with custom builds. You need to know what they are and when they want them, right from the outset. So just make sure that you're really sharp on these edges so that you can protect your client. Any thoughts or comments on your agreement with the builder? Okay, let's move on then. This is always a fun one when we're looking at the design of the home. Now, a lot of people, they get excited when they see the plans, particularly the top one, because that's what it looks like. When you start to get into the inside of the house, it becomes quite difficult for some of our clients to understand measurements and what's in the house, how it's going to look from the plans. To go from a two-dimensional view to a three-dimensional view is sometimes difficult for us to fully comprehend when we're just looking at flat plans. So there's a few things that I'd like to encourage you to look at. Number one, check your measurements. Encourage your buyer to look at what furniture they're thinking of putting in the home. You know, they may have, you know, large sectional units or cabinets, or maybe a piano or a grand piano. We had a client who got he got an extra long truck, and he knew exactly how long it was. So one of the things is he was always measuring the garage to make sure he could fit his truck in. Otherwise, he got to buy a new truck or leave the truck outside. So just make sure that you've got enough room in their house to fit everything they're looking at fitting. And maybe if they've got some room on the side, they want to put an RV pad on, make sure they can put it on there. And when you measure it, you're not just measuring the ground, you're measuring what's above, if there's any vents or soffits, you know, because if you put in a big RV in there, you've got to make sure you can get the whole thing in there. And then, of course, you've got your fences, and there's usually a return on the fences. So you've got to make sure that you can fit everything in. Often, this is where mistakes are made on the measurements. So I'd encourage you to help your clients look at those measurements carefully. Does anybody have any comments on measurements on a new build? Okay. Here's another one, electrical sockets. And think about this, because depending on how many appliances you have, you know, will depend on how many electrical sockets you want, particularly if you're looking at an exercise room, or you're looking like in your kitchen, or you're looking for some particular furniture you're bringing, like an entertainment system. Make sure you've got your electrical sockets where you need them, positioned correctly, because before they build the home, they can change those. Often the track home people will change them with a price, but the custom made builders will put them exactly where you want them put in. So you've got so many electrical sockets, you could buy more, but they'll put them where you want them. Any thoughts on electrical sockets or experiences to share? Nope. Okay. This is a big one. And we've had clients who have built a home, love the home, but when they've got in there, they thought, you know, there's just not enough light in there. I wish I'd known beforehand to put more light in, particularly in kitchens and bedrooms. Often you can't visualize how much light the can lights are going to give you or not give you, depending on how many you have in a room. So I'd encourage you to think carefully about lights and make sure you've got enough lighting on the plans. And particular things where you might have chandeliers, you know, are going to be positioned over a particular dining table, make sure they're in the right place. I've seen that happen quite often where the chandelier comes down, but it's not over the dining table. So, and it could have been easily corrected before you got all the, you know, the ceiling put in and trimmed up.
Hey, Stephen.
Yes.
One of the things that we should mention too is that a lot of times if we touch any of these electrical sockets or try to add anything, it does void out that electrical contract that the builder has. And so that they should be made aware of that, even if they're unhappy with how much lighting, that they should not do anything that would void their warranties.
Correct, good point. But you will find often the builders will say, yes, I can do this, and they'll tell you what their maximum power draw is on that particular floor or that room. But yeah, very good to highlight that.
You can also point your clients toward a lighting calculator. They're available online. Just Google lighting calculator, and it will tell you how much light you need in a space, and then you can start breaking out fixtures if your plans provide for that sort of modification.
That's a very good idea, because you can check the lumens and figure out how much light you want in that room. Yeah, very good. Thanks for sharing that, Tyler. Windows is another important part of the game, particularly on a custom-made build. Often, when you design a home, you're not thinking about how much natural light you need in that home. And I've seen some custom-build homes which, you know, have had some dark rooms. They've just not had enough light in there. And obviously, the buyer is giving them a design with some, maybe some small windows or panned out on one side, but they're not bringing enough light because it's not on the right side of the north, south, east, and west compass, and so they're not getting enough light during the day. So think about windows as well. Any other thoughts on house plans and design, or any experiences people have had, good or bad, on any of those areas? Or maybe there's something I've missed just on the house plans and design. Okay. One thing just to mention on custom-made builds, you will be paying an extra fee for your house plans, which you usually will pay up front with most builders. And it can be to the tune of between, you know, $1,000 and $2,000, depending on the size of the house. But you obviously will own the plans, and they usually a custom builder will have lots of similar plans that he can show you to enable you to figure out what plan you want. He'll take some parts of this plan and some parts of that plan and build it into your own plan. Okay, let's move on to communication. How important is your communication? I thought I'd share this image with you. Anybody been to England, they may have seen this image. There's not many of these around now, but these are the old telephone boxes. You ever seen those? Anybody been to England? Well, you don't see many of these now, but when I was growing up as a boy, these would be everywhere. Little telephone box. But there are still some of these in London and some in the big cities, but they're not really used these days because of the mobile or cell phones. But our communication is important. It is important because we've got three people involved in this transaction. We've got you, the agent, your client, the buyer, and then we've got the builder. So with new construction, our communication must be the very best, because as we're going through this process, you know, these people are buying a house, which is their biggest purchase, and they're trying to build a house which is going to be the very best for them. It's going to be their dream house. So another thought to think about here, and we've already mentioned this, someone mentioned this earlier, is things being written down. When you're communicating, particularly with a builder, with your buyer, often we will use text or we'll use, you know, voice over. I would suggest you might consider qualifying things in emails, because emails are much easier to find than scrolling through a text, which can be, you know, multiple hundred lines of text, whereas an email you can find the date quickly and you can find what's been agreed in your electronic discussions or even in your verbal discussions. So if you made an agreement, it may not necessarily be in the contract, but it's something you've agreed to. I would suggest you qualify that in an email and send it to the builder and copy in your client, the buyer. It's just so that if they come back and say, oh no, I didn't know we were doing that, you can say, well, we spoke about it on this date, and you know, here's the email. I kind of confirmed it in my email. I found this to be very useful, particularly with a new construction that can take several months. And, you know, if you're trying to look at something you agreed, you know, last September, and we're now in January, sometimes it's difficult to find if you're just looking through text messages. Anybody have any experiences on that or any comments on qualifying your communication? Oh, okay. When you do communicate, and it involves both parties, as the buyer's agent, make sure you include both the buyer and the builder. That's really important, so they both can see what you're saying. And of course, ask your buyer to copy you in on all their communication with the builder. Sometimes the builder may forget to keep you in the loop, not intentionally, but just because of the way it is. And then the buyer will respond to them in an email, and then you're not privy to what's going on. So certainly ask your buyer to copy you in on all their communication with the builder. And again, ask the builder to copy you in on all their communication with your buyer. That's really important. You're like the linchpin here. You're like the one in the middle. Got to make sure that everything's being communicated correctly. Any thoughts or comments on communication? Anybody had any experiences that have been a challenge on communication? Okay. Just make sure you remember sometimes the buyer will forget what they've agreed 4 months ago, and will think it might be different to what was agreed. And so that's why you've got to make sure that the communication is tight, and you can, you know, share with your buyer, oh no, we did agree with this. This was the date we agreed on it, and the buyer and the builder's doing the right thing. So just be careful on the communication. Okay, so we are going to have challenges, usually on every transaction we work with. We've had very few transactions that we haven't had challenges with. But my first recommendation to you is to be honest with both your client and the builder. Just be honest. Be upfront and be honest, and let them know that you're doing your best to help them. Work together to solve problems and concerns. I like this little visual because sometimes there are a few people involved in a transaction, particularly in a new build. You know, we have other people come that are involved in that, particularly with a custom-made build. You know, you have an electrician come in, you have plumber come in, you have carpenter come in, you have painters come in, and sometimes we need to get together to help each other make the course and to make this work. Sometimes the buyer can see the color of the paint and think, I didn't realize it was going to look like that. I was just looking at a small swatch and now it's too dark, you know, or they see the carpet and they say, this carpet's not really what I thought it would. It was much softer on the little sample I was touching, you know. So it's important we work together with all the people that are involved in the new construction and help each other along the way. Be a good mediator. Sometimes you'll need to explain things in more detail to your customer, your client. And remember that everybody wants this to work out. The builder wants it to work out, the buyer wants it to work out, and you as the agent want this transaction to run to completion. This is really important. Do not ignore concerns. Deal with them quickly. If a challenge comes in, don't think, I'll deal with that tomorrow, or I'll deal with that next week when I feel better. You've got to deal with it. If the builder comes up with a problem or your buyer comes up with an issue, you've got to deal with it, and you've got to deal with it quickly. I usually remember this little slogan that I have in my head all the time, and that is, information reduces frustration. Often, frustration in a contract, particularly with a buyer, is because they don't have enough information. And once you explain to them a little bit more detail, give them more information, then they become more comfortable. We had a buyer a few years ago, and it was a tract home they were building. And unfortunately, the builder could not get the city permits to start the excavation. And it got delayed 6 months. And our buyer was just at the end of their tether. But we found the more information we gave them, the better off they were. You know, we'd go and attend the meetings with the builder, and then they keep us up to date with all of the developments with the city. And that helped us get through that transaction because we were able to give more and more information to our client. So just remember, information reduces frustration. Anybody got any comments on any of those points on this slide? Or has anybody had any experiences where they've found difficulty with their client and then they've been able to overcome it by giving more information? No? Okay. All right, let's look at the building process. And what we're going to do here, I'm going to cover a few items on the building process. For those of you who have not done a new build, is anybody here not done a new build? Show of hand if you've not done a new build. Okay, one there, good. Hopefully it will help you on this. So we're going to cover these in a little bit of detail. There's the break in the ground. There's the footings, foundation. Obviously, this all happens after we've approved the plans. You've got the rough plumbing, you've got the framing, the sheeting, you've got the trusses and the roofing going in. You've got your shingles, your tiles, your vents. You complete your plumbing, you've got your electrics, HVAC, ducting, and your four-way inspection. So we'll take it up to there first and see if we can understand how this goes. So breaking ground, that's when you know you're moving. As soon as I start breaking ground, you know that deposit you put in there is probably not going to come back to you because they've started the procedure. And the good thing about breaking ground, particularly if you live close by, you can start to watch your house be built. And this particular run of slides is a house that we built in Harriman some 7 years or so ago. So it's quite exciting to watch your own house build from, you know, a bit of dirt to a full home. So when you know the builder has started moving earth, you know that things are going to start moving, and he's already got his permit to build and he's ready to roll. So the footings and the foundation are the first things that are going to go in. So those little footings down on the left, we're going to put those in first, and then they're going to start to build with these forms, the walls, build the basement and then they're going to put the house on top of the basement, basically. When I first moved over here from England, I could not believe how fast a house could be built, because obviously it's just built with timber over here. In England, you don't build houses with timber. They'd only last a couple of years. You know, they're built with brick. And what they do in England, they'll first of all prepare the ground, and then they'll put these big blue bricks. Well, I said not big, they're very heavy blue bricks, which are foundation bricks that will put low down into the ground. And they'll leave them there for 6 months, because obviously England has a lot of rain, and they need to allow it to settle before they start to build their house, which is more bricks on top of bricks, which could then take another, 3 or 4 months. So you're looking at nearly a year to build a house in England. Whereas over here, they can build a house in 2 or 3 months if they've, got their act together so fast. I could never believe it when I first saw it. But it's a very, very clever system. They get these forms in, they build the pattern, they pour the concrete, take the forms away, and then they build the house on top, which is very fast, very effective, and pretty strong. They're the footings anyway. The next thing they're going to put in is the rough plumbing. Okay, so they've got all of the plumbing into this site, and then I'm going to put it into the house. And it took me a while to figure out what all the colours meant, but I thought I'd share it with you because this is pretty important. So you're going to see pipes and you're going to see flags. And this is what they mean. If you see the red flags, don't move them because they're above power lines, conduit and cables. Your orange flags, telecommunication or alarms or signal lines. Anything that's yellow, whether it's pipes or flags, is going to be your flammable material, your gas, your oil, your steam, petroleum. And then like those big green pipes, they're your sewer lines, your drain lines. Blue is your drinking water. You've got irrigation in purple. And then you don't often see pink, but they are temporary survey markings. And then the white, of course, the excavation limits. So that's what you've kind of got going on with your colours. And it's nice to know those, because if you've got, a client that's never built before, and they live close and they want to watch this house slowly take shape, and they say, oh, what are all these flags? What are these coloured flags? And what are these pipes? You can tell them. And it gives you credibility. And it also helps you to make them more excited about the build. Oh, there's my little chicken. Here's your first keyword, guys. To write this keyword down, we're going to use the word plumbing. Plumbing, plumbing. That'll be your first keyword, okay? So any thoughts or comments on this part of the building process, or does anybody have any challenges on this? Tyler, you've had about 3 builds this year, did you say? Do you have any challenges or anything you'd like to comment on this part of the building process?
I had a challenge actually in one of the homes that I represented. They got concrete up really fast, and then they started building a structure above the concrete, and it happened to rain coincidentally during that process, and there was a whole bunch of water that flooded into the garage. Not flooded, just it was not in a bad way, but it all pooled up in one place, and we realized that there was a depression in the garage. And I showed it to the builder, and the builder said, oh yeah, that's normal, you can have depressions in the garage. But the buyer was not happy about this, and they had about $50,000 worth of structure built above that concrete, and they threatened to back out of the deal. And the builder said, well, what do you want me to do? Tear out the 50 grand of lumber that we just put in, all this structure? Or how do you want me to fix this? What do you want me to do? And the builder offered to put in some self-leveling concrete. That's not necessarily a great solution, but that was the solution that the buyer accepted. But if you're ever out representing a property and it's in the middle dead heat of the summer, go out and pour a bucket of water on the concrete and see what happens. you may save yourself some headaches down the road.
Wow, that's an interesting experience. I'm glad your buyers were able to accept that. If they're not accepted it, where would you have gone with that contract?
Oh man, I had no idea. And I would open that up to this conversation here. I'd love to hear what other people would be willing to do. I did everything I could to try to keep that deal alive and moving. And they did. They went through and it worked. But I don't know what would have happened what I would have done even if the buyer said, no, I'm not okay with that. This isn't the house I want to live in with a depression like that in my garage. The concern was that the driveway was a very flat driveway. It wasn't angled away. I mean, there was some angle, but not a lot. But there was a stretch of concrete out in front where it would just catch rain, and it did plague the buyer after they purchased the property. And when it was finished, every time it would rain, they would get water in their garage, despite having that self-leveling concrete there. So that depression was not a minor thing. And it affected the buyer for a very long time, literally until they moved out of the property. But that was interesting to me. And I don't know what I would have done. Any advice would be appreciated there. I still don't know what would have been a better way to go.
Yeah, the other challenge there, of course, when they sell the home, they really should highlight that challenge.
Yeah.
They should disclose it, shouldn't they?
Yes, and they did, but it was something that they felt was, that it wasn't their fault. But yeah, they did disclose it.
I would imagine the builder's probably got something in his contract that allows him to continue on and not have to reverse that work.
Yeah, I mean, I never really got to fisticuffs with the builder, but I said, hey, this is a serious problem. My buyer doesn't like it. We want to back out, and that started the process of saying their attorney's looking over it, and then me as the agent looking over it and trying to determine where in the contract could we pin the builder, or could the builder walk away from the buyer. And everyone be happy. And the builder came back with a lot of provisions saying, no, you can't get out for this, this, and this, and this. A lot of that was smokescreen. But ultimately, we never had to pursue that. So I don't know how long or how strong they would have stood on those provisions.
Wow. Anybody got any thoughts or experience on that they could share? That's a tough one.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Carol.
Is it possible to call city inspectors to bring that out? A lot of times they miss a lot of stuff, to have a little more leverage on your side if something's an issue that you're concerned about. Has anybody dealt with that?
That's a good question. I did not think to bring out a building inspector. If they had, I'm sure the building inspector would have looked at it and said, well, that's a depression in the concrete. I don't know what leverage that would have had over the builder, because the builder had a good point as well. Like there was quite a bit of structure over that concrete, and that would be a pretty hard thing to take all that down to re-pour the concrete. So anyway, it was a big impasse. I still don't know what the right way to solve it would have been.
Yeah, I just think it would have added a little weight to having the contractor want to fix it, or also liability. We aren't builders as real estate agents. It's getting somebody else into the picture where, and the buyer may not know that much about building as well. So it's getting another professional in there, their opinion, that kind of gets you a little bit less liable.
Yeah, I agree.
Like
that would probably be the best approach there. Thank you for sharing that, Carol. Any other comments on that, or any other thoughts? Kayla?
I have a thought. So I used to sit in a model home for a period of time. And one of the things that most people don't realize is adding a gas line to your kitchen makes a huge difference long term. You can't add it down the line. So if you ever have somebody that is building, I always recommend putting that gas line in there, because it does make a difference to you when you sell and whether or not you want to use an electric or a gas stove. So
yeah, very good point. Yes, and this would be the time to talk about it. Wow, well, that was good. Any other thoughts on this part of the building process? I'm glad you raised that, Ty. That definitely gives us something to think about. Okay, framing. This is probably the most exciting part of the build in the initial stages for your buyer, because they get to see something that looks like a house, and they can walk around it, and they can start to, you know, fall in love with it. And you know, it's looking more like their place to live. However, weather can be a challenge with some of the framing. Anybody had any bad experiences with unexpected weather on timber framing? We were out in Harriman, we saw a house there, and they must have run out of money. That's all I can think of. But the house was framed and it sat there for a year. Okay. Probably a bit longer, actually. And you could see the timber was starting to struggle. And most likely they would have to take down most of that timber and replace it, because it had been weathered so much with the extreme heat and the extreme wet and cold. And so usually when they're framing up, they're usually pretty quick, and it's not long before you see, you know, it protected with the outside material. This is always a fun part of the build, to watching the roofs going, see the big cranes come in and put those trusses in place. And I would say probably this is the most exciting part for the initial stages of the build for the buyer, because they're starting to see their house take shape. They're looking at the three-dimensional look, and it can be quite exciting for them. Get the roof on, get the shingles in place, get those vents in place, all important stuff there. And another thing you might want to think about when you're advising your buyer on new construction is the colour of the roof. Obviously, the roof is a large piece of the house, and sometimes when buyers are looking at a very small swatch of a roof colour, they can't imagine what it's going to look like when it's, you know, 30, 40 feet of it up in the air. So looking at the colour of the roof is important. Often with the track homes, they've already got colours lined out, the work, but with a custom build, sometimes they can have some unusual colours that maybe the buyer may not be as comfortable with when they see it so big on the roof. Anybody had any challenges with roof colours with clients? Okay. Plumbing gets completed in the inside of the house, so all of your water and your sewerage gets in place, and this is great to look at. I always encourage clients that I've got that are building a new house to take photographs. If they live close by, take photographs of the house as it's being built, so they can see where the plumbing lines are, see the electrical cables, see how it's built, because down the track they may want to make an adjustment or put something somewhere, and if they know what's behind the framing, that can be an easier task for them. In this particular house that we had, after probably after a year, we noticed that the bath that was put in was faulty, and so we eventually got the suppliers of the bath to give us another bath, but unfortunately they wouldn't fit it. But because I'd taken photographs of the plumbing, of the framing and the plumbing, I could see what I needed to do, I was able to put that new bath in myself. So it is good to take the little photographs of the build as you're progressing. Anybody had an experience on framing or the plumbing issues at this stage with a new build? Okay, and we get the electrics. Again, very difficult to put in electrics after you've got the sheetrock on. So this is the time to make sure you've got enough sockets where you need them. But this is how they'll look when they're planned in on your framing. Any comments on electrics? HVAC ducting. By the way, do we know what HVAC stands for? Who can tell me? It took me a while to figure it out when I first got over here. Okay, Tyler, what is it?
Heating, ventilation, and air conditioning.
Yep, it's real simple. But I know when I first got over, because we don't really have air conditioning in England. You know, we just have we have radiators. That's basically pipes with radiators on the wall. That's how we heat up the home, and we don't have any air conditioning. You just swelter or open the window or put a fan on. So that's what it is: heating, ventilation, air conditioning, ducting. And the ducting is good to watch. Watch that go up. There are different types of ducting. This is the, I was going to say aluminium, but you guys like me to say aluminum. If I get some of my English words wrong, just sort of say, hey, we don't understand what that is. If I say tomato instead of tomato, or what's another one I usually get caught on? Oh yeah, vitamins and vitamins. That's another good one. Anyway, you've got your aluminum up there. It always sounds for the worst one for me when I first moved over here was garage, as it so happens. I used to think, God, fancy calling a garage a garage. But anyway, I've slowly got used to that, having been in real estate. It's a garage. I still can't figure out where the R is though in garage, because it's garage, isn't it? G-A-G-A-Rage, R-A-G-E, garage. Got me? But anyway, it is a garage over here, so that's okay. But having a look at the ducting is good, and often in some of the cheaper range houses, you'll find the ducting is in round coils, which are covered in bags and other material to keep the insulation in. So that's the ducting. What else? Oh, there's my chicken. Okay, so that's your next word then, is ducting. Okay, D-U-C-T-I-N-G. That's your next keyword, ducting. So I don't forget that. All right, let's move to the four-way inspection. Now, usually the house is going to probably look something like this on a four-way inspection. Does anybody know what a four-way inspection is? Apart from Tyler, because I'm sure he'll know. One of you ladies know what a four-way inspection is? Four things. If not, I'll have to bring Tyler back in. Okay, maybe we should tell him, shall we, Tyler? I'll bring it up. Put him out of the misery. There it is. It's your framing, your plumbing, your electrics, and your HVAC. That's your four-way inspection. Now, I would suggest that as an agent, where possible, you always attend that four-way inspection. This will be where the builder or a manager for the builder will take your client throughout the whole house, and they'll explain things to them. So I went on one last year with one of our clients. It was obviously a new construction. He was quite a tall guy, a little bit taller than me, but he must have been, I bet, 6'4". And he was very interested in the shower. He said, I'm building this house, he says, and I've got to have a shower that can start at the top of my head rather than at the back of my head. And so we went into the shower, and sure enough, you know, they had to move that that shower head up probably another 10 inches to cover it. But we didn't pick that up on the plans, but when we looked in the for inspection, he was very keen to have that done, and they were able to make the the difference and adjust it for him. If you look at that top visual there, where you've got you can see the tub behind the framing, and in front of the framing you can see a frame section. This was in our house in Harriman, and this section here was going to actually be the fireplace. And when we walked through the home, we looked at this, and Leslie said, "We can't have that there." I says, "Yeah, we can't have that there. Where are we going to put that?" I said, "We should have put it in the corner." And so we said to the builder, we can't have the fireplace there because it's right in the middle of the bedroom, really. To the right, there's a corner there, so we had him move the fireplace to the corner. But we couldn't see it. We'd not figured it out on the inspection, but when we saw it in reality, it was clearly in the wrong place. And so
I think sometimes when you look at plans, you think it looks good. But yeah, I think what it taught me is to look at the plans in more details, because the fireplace was always there on the plans. But it kind of, in the reality, when I saw it, I'm like, oh my goodness, that cannot go there. And it just seemed so obvious that it would go in the corner. But on the plan, it didn't, I just didn't think it was a problem. So look at your plans more carefully.
Yeah. But if we'd not attended the four-way inspection, we would not have seen that. So definitely go on the four-way inspection with your client. It's an advantage to be there, and they should explain everything to them, show them where things are going, and you know, you'll be able to see more or less the house in its complete form without the sheetrock on. So you'll see all the electrics in place, you'll see all the plumbing in place, you'll see all the rooms in place, all mapped out, and of course then you've got your heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Any comments or thoughts on the four-way inspection?
Yeah, so I have a question.
Perfect.
So just going back to my original question. So do you go when the inspector's there and you're walking through with him as he's doing the inspection?
Yes. Perfect. Thank you for reminding me on that, Julie. Yes, so this will be usually the builder that will be walking you through. He's like a manager. It's not like an inspector that we have for a second house, even though you could actually have your own inspector to go there, but you have to pay for that extra. But generally speaking, the manager who usually has similar qualifications or understanding as the inspector does will walk you through the process, and that could take a good hour or even longer, depending on how big the home is. But he should explain absolutely everything to you. And he'll also explain what can be adjusted. Sometimes I say, you know, we can't adjust that because of X, Y, Z. Or he'll say, you know, let me have a word with the builder and see if we can make that adjustment for you. He'll also talk about where it's going to be soundproof. It was in like a townhome or something, and how that's going to fit together. He'll talk to you about where your showers are going to go, your tubs are going to go, talk about your utilities in the kitchen, your washer and your dryer. He'll walk through everything with you. So yeah, you want to attend the whole of that if you can. And often, if it's a completely new experience for your buyer, they will be a little bit bewildered sometimes when they see this house taking shape, because they've still got to imagine some of it. And they'll have questions, which will be very simple questions, which you'll also be able to help answer for them. Yeah, thank you for reminding me on that. Any other questions or thoughts on the four-way inspection? Okay, windows going next. And there are a couple of things on the windows. Depending on where the windows are, will depend on what type of glass is used in the windows. I know on our build, they had to replace some of the windows because they've got the wrong glass in the bathroom windows. You know, needed to be a different type of glass for safety there. But the windows will go in about this stage. Sometimes you'll see the windows in on your four-way inspection as well, but that's not what they're checking. And then you've got your drywall insulation and your taping and your texture. This is kind of fun to watch. If you live close by the home, it's easy for people to can see where their light fixtures are going to go, and they can start to get a real feel of how the house is going to take shape. Then your carpentry goes in, and these are usually different contractors that will come in to do these different jobs. With the carpentry, that is something you can change. If you live local and you're watching your build and you're thinking, you know, I need another row of shelves for shoes or whatever, they could make an adjustment at this stage if the builder is prepared to do that. Often if it's a new build, you're choosing most of these items from a display shop, you know, like the color of your type of rails on your handrail and whatnot. But the carpentry will come in then, followed by your painting. Anybody had any experiences they want to share on carpentry or painting? Tyler?
This is usually about the time when if it's going to go bad, this is when it starts to go bad, because the customer starts realizing this is what's actually going to be their house, and there's a lot more attention to detail now. This is when the home buyer really starts showing up every day if they haven't been already, and you start getting phone calls and texts on your phone. They put in the door backwards. There's a light fixture in the wrong place, or, you know, we didn't get the outlet we thought we were going to get, or whatever it is. This is where complaints go up through the roof. Usually pretty, you know, up to the four-way inspection, people are pretty calm. But when they start putting in paint and flooring, which you haven't got to yet, those are the times when it starts to really ratchet up how much communication you get from the buyer. And it's usually negative. So this is when, as a realtor, this is a really good time to practice your de-escalation skills.
That's right. Yeah, and it's difficult because often the buyer has not been able to imagine what the color was going to look like on a huge wall. One of the things I've learned over the years is the difference between, you know, 2-color paint and 3-color paint. And there's a huge difference between 2-color and 3-color. So 2-color is, you got your baseboards one color, and you got your walls and the ceiling the other color. Whereas 3-color is the ceiling is another color, be different to your walls, and that's the one that's preferred. And often the buyer will think, oh, the ceiling looks too dark because it's the same color as the walls. So that's something to be aware of. But of course, painting 3-color is quite a bit more expensive than just a 2-color or the 2-tone. So, you know, think about that. The carpets are another thing, and the flooring. They start to see it in big sections, and they think, oh wow, that's too light, or it's too dark, or it's, you know, it's just the wrong shade for me, or the wrong texture if it's the flooring. So do take time to help your clients spend enough time thinking about colors, that's paint colors, types of carpet, types of flooring. And it's ideal if they can go into a home that's got that carpet or use that flooring. There's a model home or another home that's used it, so they can see how it looks and how it feels. Because as Tyler said, this can be a challenging area to help the buyer feel comfortable about this house they're going to pay a chunk of money for, and now they don't like the color, which is really hard to change at this stage. This is not easy to change at this stage. Any other thoughts or comments on this slide? Okay. Let's move to exterior. This is a fun section. You start to see the exterior of the home being put together. And if you've got any sort of brick in a fireplace or whatever on the inside of the house, to do it at the same time. if you've got a house number that you want putting into the home instead of some bricks, this would be the time to do it. You can see all of your stucco and your siding go in place, and the house starts to take shape. Next will be your soffit and fascia and rain gutters. We had a rain gutter because at the back of the house there, you see the double deck. We've got some rain gutters that go down those two stone columns. And unfortunately, one of the workers had forgot to put the extension to the rain gutter in place. So what happened on one of the side of the columns? So the rain gutter should have gone down the column, and then the extension sort of out 10 foot into the yard, and then the concrete was going to go over that extension of the rain gutter. But one of the workers forgot to put it there. So we had one rain gutter that was going under the concrete correctly, and the other rain gutter was on top of the concrete. So we had to talk to the builder about that, and he wasn't very happy about it because he'd already, laid that concrete. So you're going to have to take the concrete up because the rain gutter's got to go below that concrete slab so it can go out to the yard. He did eventually do it, but we did have to fight a little bit to get that done, and we were the client. So look out for your buyers, and if there's something that's not done right, it can still be corrected at this stage if it's outside on the on the fascia or the rain gutters, etc. Anybody had any experience or anything you want to share on that? Okay, let's move on. Cabinets and countertops. Usually, if there's going to be a delay in the new construction, unfortunately, it's going to be the countertops or the cabinets. They've probably ordered them from some country that's slow in getting their delivery out here to Utah. And
You mean company, not country?
but actually, I mean,
outside of Utah.
country. Some of them come from the Middle East, don't they? They're made up out there, and they can't get them into the country quick enough. But yeah, often the cabinets can be delayed because of supply, particularly if you're in the middle of the year or in the fall. We had a client who built a house last year. Just remind me, Leslie Ann, how long did they have to wait for their cabinets because of the COVID problem? The Smiths?
Oh, I think 6 months. Over 6 months.
Yeah. So, but they were in their house without their cabinets for 6 months. Is that correct?
Oh, no, I think it was a lot of their furniture that was late. I think their closing was delayed, and they were a cash buyer. So that you can often do things if you're a cash buyer that you can't with a lender. So
yeah, I think they were in their home for several months though before all of their items arrived. Yeah, so that does happen. Another thing I didn't mention earlier, but if you've got granite countertops, often you'll go and pick the granite color. That's another one of those areas, like the paint and the carpet and the flooring. Sometimes they can't imagine how that color is going to look in their kitchen when it's in a big slab form. So make sure they cover that carefully. Choose that carefully. Okay, so your carpet goes in, and you can still make adjustments here a little bit. That's photograph from the bottom right there. We actually extended the wood. So the wood on the right, I think we extended it by at least one panel into the carpet. It was first done. The wood was down, the carpet wasn't down, and we said we needed a little bit more walk room there. So they extended another panel, another plank on that left side before they put the carpet in. So there are some things you can change if the builder's willing to do that, particularly on a custom built home, as this one was. Then you've got your landscaping. Now, sometimes you'll have a different company do your landscaping. Sometimes the builder will do some of the landscaping, but not all of the landscaping. Often the builder will do the front of the house, very, very basic landscaping, particularly if it's a track home. But you can negotiate landscaping options with your builder from the outset. Has anybody had any experience with landscaping with a new build that they like to share, or any challenges or any good experiences? No good experiences, huh? All right. Final walkthrough. So the final walkthrough is going to be you and the buyer with the builder or the builder's manager. And basically, all of these things you're going to be looking at, because all of these things have happened since you did the four-way walkthrough. All right, they're the things you're going to be looking at. Now let's talk about inspections. There are city inspections. There's basically 3 of them that happen not with your buyer involved. It's just the city inspector and the builder. The first one is what we call the pre-pour. So inspector will come out, that's before they've poured any concrete. He'll come and see the property, he'll look at the sewer, the water, the footing, the foundation, and the underground plumbing. That's what he'll look at. And he'll make sure that all the measurements are correct, that it's not too close to where it needs to be, and that it's flat and it's going to make the grade. So he'll do that, and then the inspector will come out on the pre-drywall, which is really the four-way inspection. He would do that before the builder meets with you at the property to do your four-way inspection. So the city will look at that. And then they'll come out again and they'll do the pre-final walkthrough, which are all of those other areas that we've covered. So before you do any inspection on a new build with your client, the buyer and the builder will have already gone through all of these with the city, the various professional city inspectors. And in saying that, you could also have your new home inspected by your own private inspector. And this certainly can be useful if you have concerns and, need a professional review. And I think, with Tyler's situation on that concrete, if it was going to go rough, that's what I would do. I would get an inspector in that specialised solely in that area of the work and get them to write up a review. That would probably cost you maybe $400 to do that, but then you could probably use that to put pressure on the builder to make a better choice, or if you didn't, to sue the builder. Any thoughts or comments on the inspections? Yes, Carol.
Hi, I had in the final walkthrough, my clients sort of walked over this area where there's venting that making a noise in the basement. And I guess at the time I didn't really know what, other than really strongly saying they had to fix it before we closed. What is the legal paperwork we use for just covering ourselves that they do fix something when you're that close to the closing? Is it just an amendment or an addendum? Sorry.
Yes, it will be an addendum, but you'd also have to be very careful to look at the contract that they've already signed with the builder. And bearing in mind, the builder usually supplies that contract. And there'll be somewhere in the contract, usually the builder covers themselves. And you'll need to make sure that you are, you're clear what the builder is thinking you've agreed to. But if you want to change something, you will just raise an addendum.
Yeah, the issue was maybe not necessarily structural line. Maybe the city would probably pass it. Maybe it was a personal, it was definitely loud because they had put venting right over this certain part of the floor that just kind of vibrated it and made a noise. So it was kind of subjective, you know what I mean? It was more like, can you just be nice and fix it? So that was.
Yeah, And if you've got that challenge, when I've had that challenge, I've just really met with the builder personally first and see if you've had a good relationship with the builder along the way, often you can get the builder to be just a bit more flexible outside of the box than he or she would be initially. That would be the key. Kayla, did you have a comment?
That's what I did.
So a lot of times the builders want us to go ahead and move forward with closings, even though there are little things that have not been completed. And that is covered under the builder's warranty. So if there are things that you're unhappy with, make sure you just have it in writing in an email back and forth saying that you'd like the repair. And a lot of times that can be remedied within the warranty and that 1 year builder period of time.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. I had a situation a couple of years ago. It was some of those vents that were coming out the side of the house, and they just looked so ugly. They were just put in an ugly position, and they came out and they looked ugly. And my buyer was not at all happy. In fact, he was very unhappy. But they passed the inspection. You know, they were okay. They were functional, and the builder was not going to change them. And so I met with the builder and I said, you know, I went to their main show house and met with I guess the next level up, because these were trap builders. And eventually they said, okay, let's see what we can do on this. And they did change it, but it was only because my relationship with them was good enough that we were able to come to some agreement. So that's why it's very, very important from the outset that you just have a good relationship with the builder, because you never know when you're going to have to play that card. And sometimes you're going to have to play that card, you know, the nice card. And I think generally speaking, the builder wants the best for the client. You know, he or she wants to make this a really good experience, and they will do what they can. Obviously, they've only got so much money and they've only got so much resources they can put into repairing and rectifying things. But I think if you've got a good relationship, you can certainly help.
So Stephen, isn't that kind of a selling point for our realtors? Don't we have a little more leverage when if a buyer is unrepresented, they may not have as much push for those little things?
Absolutely. The builder's only going to represent himself, really. You know, he can look out for himself. And, you know, someone who's buying new construction, if they've not got a realtor looking after them, they've got nobody representing them. You know, and we've got a lot of clout because we've got each other. We've got people in the business that have probably passed some of these challenges, and in doing so, they can advise us and help us.
And they know we'll talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Very good.
I like to make friends with the realtors on either side of the build that we're doing, if they have representation, because it makes that conversation so much easier when you come with a really, really big stick to the builder and say, well, I mean, I'd hate to mention this to next door over here. You know, they're 2 weeks behind us. We don't want to have a problem over there as well. You know, and you put that hand in hand with a good relationship with the builder. Yeah, it works really well to have that good relationship, but then also have a big stick to hit with if you need to.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so we've got the final walkthrough. Personally, I think it's a really good idea for us as realtors to attend that final walkthrough. Sometimes our buyer can have questions or concerns, but maybe they're not confident enough to, you know, raise it. And you want them to be happy. And so and you can see how your buyer's looking and feeling. You can see if they're feeling a little bit uncomfortable. You say, hey, you good with this? Talk to me about it. And often they can share with you their concerns, and then you can, you know, raise it with the builder. Remember, you represent them. You're not representing the builder. You want this to go through, but you do want to represent your client. When I go through a walkthrough, I always encourage my client to touch everything and feel everything, and you know, they can open doors and windows and open the cabinet doors. If it's any dents or paint areas that need looking at, let's raise it, because this is the time to do it. Often they're only picking up there's a bit of paint missing here, or you know, something that's being missed being painted. But, you know, sometimes a window doesn't open. I always open the windows and drop them down, open the drawers, open the cupboards, and making sure just those little things are working. So I'd encourage you to do that and encourage your client to do the same. Only sign off the walkthrough when all the items that have been discussed or need addressing or need fixing have been agreed by the builder. He should have like a form and he'll have you sign those. And usually they're pretty good. I think, you know, builders are pretty good at completing the work. Anybody got anything to say on that slide at all? Okay. Oh, another keyword. I'm going to give you the keyword as walkthrough on this one. Walkthrough. That's your third keyword. Okay, so basically we got the settlement. I know it's been difficult this past year attending settlement with the COVID restrictions, but where possible, I encourage you to attend settlement. I think it's good to be there with your client on the settlement and help them, you know, do that last stage together, know you care. Often building companies, particularly those who are building lots of homes, particularly those where maybe they're dealing even with the loan, they'll give you the keys and access to the property immediately. If not, obviously it's going to be when it funds and records. But I've found most builders have been very good at being flexible. We had a client last year where it had not funded and recorded, but our clients were moving in from out of state and they wanted to get into the home in the weekend, and it wasn't going to fund and record until probably Monday or even Tuesday. But the builder was very gracious, and we spoke to him and he says, yeah, okay, you can move in into the garage, get all your stuff in there, and then hopefully Monday we can open the house. And I think actually he let them move into the house on Monday before it was actually funded and recorded, but we'd had a good relationship with him and he was good to go. But often you're going to get the keys or access to the building fairly quickly with a new construction. I always encourage my clients to not bug the builder every day, because that can wind them up. I say, hey, just over the first, you know, 3 or 4 weeks, just make a list of all the things that might need attention. Maybe there's a doorknob that doesn't work properly, or a door that doesn't fit correctly, or might be a cabinet door that keeps rolling open because it's not balanced correctly, or there might be some putty not right on a door. I say just make a list, and then within the first 20-30 days you can probably give that list to the manager, and then he's got a list collectively that he can work out. Some buyers are so excited that they're calling that manager every day. I found this and this isn't working, or this, I need this fixing. And if you're not careful, you can make your manager a little bit irritated, and then all of a sudden you're not a priority. So I found doing that helps my buyer not to be too enthusiastic about getting things done quickly, to take their time. As you work through the home, you know, over the first 20-30 days, you're going to find some things that need attention. Just write them all down and then give them the list. And it's even better if they can email the list to the manager and copy you in, so you can help follow up if you need to. But generally speaking, that sort of approach I found to be much easier, both with the builder and the buyer. It removes the frustration, which can sometimes be there. Immediately after settlement, Kayla will like this bit. Make sure you got your documents done. Get them on Sky Slope so you get paid. Would you like to add anything to that, Kayla?
Don't wait until the last day.
Don't leave it to the last day, but make sure you do get it done.
And if you need help, there are plenty of people who want to help you. So give us a call.
And Kayla looks after the transaction coordinators. So, you know, if you need some help on that, they can certainly help. But do make sure you don't forget that line, because otherwise it's going to delay your payment. I will say Presidio are the fastest payers that we've ever had in the last 10 years being a realtor. Yeah, amen to that. So as long as you've got all of your paperwork correctly submitted, they're super fast, super fast. I don't know any other company that move as fast as Presidio does. So big hand for Presidio on that.
Stephen,
Yes.
I just have something real quick. I used to be over compliance here at Presidio. And one of the biggest things that we saw that would hold up a paycheck for a new build was not changing the purchase price to match after your client's gone through and done change orders and upgraded their countertops and upgraded their cabinets and whatever. So you would still have like the original price that you went under contract with, but then the closing documents would show like 100 grand more. And so that would hold up a check because we need it to match. So just make sure you update that sort of information in SkySlope as well to get paid quickly.
Perfect. That's a great kind. I don't know what I've done here. I've got that piece there, so we can get rid of it. Hold on a minute. It's just, I bet you can all see that chat. I don't know where that's come from. My mouse isn't grabbing it. Okay. Well, I'm not going to worry too much about that. I'm going to have to worry about it. I'm going to get rid of that. Well, there it is. Okay. Yes, thanks for raising that. That's a very good point. And I should be able to. Okay. I just got a note here. I think it's a good idea to reach out to your buyer during the first month just to see how they are, see how they settle in. I think it helps your client know that you really do care about them and you're not just sort of there until the transaction's completed, then away you go and you never talk to them again. I think it's good to reach out to them and say, hey, how's this going? You know, how are you getting on with the builder? Have you been able to get any of these other things satisfied? And if they've got any challenges, they'll share it with you. Has anybody had any good experiences doing that? Well, I think you will have good experience if you try that one out. Okay, well, we're about through here. Any questions on anything we've talked about today? You guys have been awesome to work with.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
So when you talk about making relationships with builders, like I'm working with a client right now at Woodside, and they have like a ton of sales managers or salespeople, and they have them at different communities. You know, if you're working with a big builder, do you just suggest like finding one person or multiple people, or like who are you making relationships with at large builders? If that makes sense.
Can I say something? Oh.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think that once you work with an agent with a builder, especially one of the bigger builders, if you like them, then go back to them. Here's the deal though. Some builders are, what's the word? Subdivision specific. In other words, if you've got a client who wants to build in Saratoga Springs, and say for argument's sake, you're working with Edge, they will let their agents work in any of the communities, or at least last year that was the case. But others are very specific to the area. So if you find that you have an agent that you really like with a builder, find out if they can help you with a client in another area and establish that early on. Because if you find a realtor that you really enjoy, I would recommend using them if you can. If you can't, ask them who they recommend in that other division where your client wants to build, who you would recommend working with.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, we have to remember that even though we're in the business of buying and selling houses and constructing houses, our real business is relationships with people. And if we've got a good relationship with the builder or the agents, it can help us tremendously, you know, with our clients. Any other questions from anyone about anything?
I have a question. I had some clients that wanted to do a custom home, and maybe you already touched on this a little bit, but if they just want to buy a piece of land and sit on it for a year, you know, I have a hard time explaining, you know, one close would be better than two closes. But if someone's doing a custom home and they have an architect you're not really dealing with a tract home, you're not dealing with a builder, a typical builder around here, you're dealing with the general contractor. So how do those legal documents look like? Are we just basically using new construction from the MLS? Because these are builders that are just custom, and they're not going to have their own contract per se. Can you give some advice on that kind of scenario?
Yes, I think. Okay, Leslie, you take it.
I would ask the builder up front, do you write up the contract? Do you have your own contract, or do you use the one on the MLS? But I would establish that first. When the guy that built our home was a custom builder, our home was probably one of his smallest homes. He built $1 million homes, but I think he did have his own contract. If they don't, then you can use the new construction, but I would establish that early on, obviously before you go under contract, how, you know, what he uses or what they use.
Clients, you know, ask me what's the best type of loan to get in that kind of situation. Okay, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So again, like when we built, our builder, he owned the land, but we've had other people who, like you said, have their own land that they purchased a while back. I would get with a mortgage company. I know banks tend to be, some of the banks are better with construction loans, and then sometimes you'll get a construction loan, but at the end, before you close, you will get a permanent loan with someone else. So if you have a good lender, and if you don't recommend, they often, even if they don't do the construction loans, they know your options and can guide you in the right direction.
Okay, and have maybe a meeting with all the parties involved.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
You're going to want to go with a land loan and go to one of the credit unions, UCCU. They would be the best. They have a maximum year, usually of 5 years, so they can't sit on it for a long period of time. And they do have their certain stipulations that they have to do. But that would be I think what you're asking is you need to go get a land loan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, sorry about that. I misunderstood you. If you're going to buy the land, and the credit unions are really good for that. I think you have to put down quite a chunk. I think, is it like maybe 50%? Or it's you have to put down quite a bit of money.
I want to say it's 35%.
Oh, is it?
Maybe it's gone up now.
I think it's one of those things. It's changing regularly. So.
Good. Thank you for sharing the question and the answers. So we've got to the end of the line here, which is good for me and it's good for you. It means we can get on with the rest of our day. But let me remind you just to send those 3 keywords to Leslie Ann. That's her address there, leslieann.presidio@gmail.com. Include your full name and your license number, and then we can get you credited for your CE hours on this. Anybody got anything else to say before we finish up and let you get along on your busy day? No, well, thank you for joining us today. Surely appreciate it. Hopefully we've learned a little bit on new construction.